Good morning, Bris Vegas. Look at you beautiful people. Beautiful one day, hung over the next. Okay, I've got 45 minutes to break you down, bring you back up, teach you some stuff, hopefully, and hopefully make you laugh. There'll be some tears along the way. So, satellites of love. This is really what I'm talking about. So the internet is half empty if you're a cynic like me. There's around 7 billion people in the world. There's only about 2 billion of them are currently online. But there's this really sharp uptick. So if you go back to 1995, we were all on dial-up. Roughly about 1% of the human population was online at that time. Today it's around 40%. But you only have to go to about, if you plot the numbers, you only have to go to about 2020 before it comes to 60%, and so on and so forth. Now, don't get me wrong, the internet coming to all of these third world countries is a fantastic thing. It's the great democratizer. It is a basic human right. It is a fantastic thing, but I think there's some potential issues for the people in this room, the people in the cybersecurity industry. Oh, I blew my punchline. So I did a little bit of research, and I thought it was quite interesting that the most densest populated place in terms of the internet is around this part of the world here, which is South Korea, which has 92% roughly, depending on which stats you look at. By contrast, their neighbors to the north have 0.01%. I thought that was just quite an interesting statistic. That's what Herman Melville said. There's nothing of quality in this world that is not what it is purely through contrast. So addressing this issue, so there's a few different things in flight, pardon the pun, that aim to set out to fix this. So Google Loon is these amazing balloons. They want to have 300 of these in the air. There are already a bunch of them in the air. They've committed to spending $1 billion US on this. It's a crazy thing. They're already flying over the 42nd parallel, so parts of New Zealand, South America. Not to be outdone, Zuckerberg has jumped on this, so he's got the Aquila project. We don't quite know how much he's spent on it. His plan is to have 1,000 of these drones in the air by 2020. There's an awesome video online that shows this real marketing salesy pitch for them flying it for the first time. And Zuckerberg walks around hugging people and they all high-five each other, and it's just a really beautiful thing. What they didn't show in the video, which came out sort of by accident as a result of an NTSB investigation, was that it crashed when it landed and pretty much was broken. But it's an amazing thing. The idea is to have all of these things flying around, talking to each other using dynamically directed lasers, and bringing the internet to places like India and so on and so forth. Then you've got this guy, Elon Musk. He wants to spend $3 billion US putting 4,000 satellites in the air. He reckons that'll be ready in about 2022. He's got a big problem, which is a guy called Greg Weiler, who owns OneWeb, who's got backing from Qualcomm and Richard Branson. They want to put 648 satellites in the air and by 2027. And he owns, this guy owns most of the, I guess, bandwidth rights to supply internet in this way for a lot of the world. So that's certainly going to be a problem for Elon. Then we've got the Indians. 2 weeks ago, the Indians threw a rocket into space and launched 104 satellites flawlessly. Which they did for 15 mil US, they reckon. There's a lot of, NASA are kind of a bit miffed because the Indian government are subsidizing this, so they think they're skewing their models. But, you know, the Yanks are putting satellites in the air in the kind of $1 billion range, and the Indians are able to do 104 for 15 mil. So I think it's fair to say there's going to be a lot more stuff flying around up there. The other interesting thing is that if you actually read into this, you'll find that 80% of the people who aren't online today, it's not because they don't live in areas where there is no internet, it's because they are literally too poor to get on the internet. So Facebook did this beautiful philanthropic thing of providing free internet to these people via mobile phone networks. And And it's kind of this, it's called, it's up there on the curtain somewhere. I think it's called internet.com or something silly like that. They're in lots of different countries, but it's this really creepy walled garden, low bandwidth internet, which is very much restricted by Facebook's agenda. Very much, as Blue Beetle said, if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold. Interesting omission from this list is India, who banned the service because they thought it was a disgusting monopoly. So really what this all boils down to is I think there's a bit of a storm coming. So here's my graph of the internet users versus the world population. So this green line is the world population, which is steadily going up and up and up. People are living longer, more people are being born. And then we've got from next to nothing in 1995, this kind of shoots up. And this is where I'm kind of, this is my dodgy math to work out at what point these two lines are going to intersect. I don't know whether it's going to meet or it's going to get to a certain point and flatline, probably the latter. But if you think about all the things that this means, and I'm pretty much the things that I'm thinking of the things down this list. So I'm going to do something which is a real no-no for PowerPoint, but I'll go through this list. So more satellites, more balloons and drones, more people being born, more people living longer, which means more online citizens. We've got IoT devices. We've got more websites, we've got cheaper bandwidth, we've got longer life cycle, which means that people in these countries are much more likely to keep handsets for a lot longer. They're going to inherit older handsets, which mean these older bugs aren't necessarily being replaced through attribution and through. In the West, we tend to have a phone for a couple of years and then we get rid of it because nobody wants to be seen with an iPhone 3. Whereas people in the third world will be quite happy to hang on to those things for 6 or 7 years. Charlatans. So it's a personal view of mine that there's a lot of people already in this industry that are punching a little bit above their weight. That is all, as the, this shortage of talent and the wages rise to address the shortage of talent, there are going to be more and more people in the industry that probably shouldn't be in the industry, which I think will be a problem. We've got dirt cheap cloud services. We've got endless hacking tutorials on YouTube. We've got more malware. We've got more data, more complexity, cheaper hardware, more badly written code. As we make it easier and easier for people to write code, the chances that they're going to write bad code. Difficulty in attribution. If you've ever done instant response and you've wound up tracing someone back to McDonald's Wi-Fi, that's a bit frustrating. But imagine trying to attribute the source of a problem that's going through one of Google's balloons or one of Facebook's Aquila. Good luck trying to find out where that guy is. The other thing that's interesting is all of these things are going up and up and up, except people coming into the industry. And the tail end of that is that there are InfoSec people are beginning to retire. So for the first time, it's such a young industry that we're seeing people retire from the industry. And we all kind of get paid quite well, so we tend not to, I suspect people won't be hanging around till they're in their 80s. So all this, I think, equals more cybercrime. Also, I think that it's possible to say that as the medium income of people online drops, in the same way that we see higher crime rates in poorer areas, controversially maybe, but then the potential for cybercrime is going to, the risk and reward is going to change, which means potentially more cybercrime. Also, what I think is interesting is if you imagine what is going to happen as all of these people come online for the first time, the first thing that's going to happen is when relatively naive people come online for the first time, they're going to get hit with this onslaught of scams from a relatively mature cyber criminal set. So the Eastern Europeans, the scammers, are going to jump on these people because they will get an email about some inheritance from some Nigerian uncle they've never met, and they will be seeing this for the first time and they'll go for it. Now, some of them will go away and lick their wounds and come back with even more devious, more clever scams. So it's as they get hit, the abused will become the abusers, and we're going to see lots more problems. So this is your face now. What in hell are we going to do? So if you go to RSA, if you go to OSCE, ASA conferences and walk around the vendor floors and ask people, what are we going to do? You don't see a lot of new innovation. What you see is a lot of the same old technologies with a little bit of a different spin. Yeah, we do antivirus, but we use machine learning or those kind of things. So these are the things that I sort of see coming up again and again. Blockchain, it's going to solve all the problems. Big data, quantum computer, machine learning, or maybe something else that we haven't quite yet seen. Now, The problem with these things is that all of these things, if they're going to be the solution to problems and cybercrime and the problems we have, they've got a massive amount of ground to make up. So blockchain really borders Bitcoin, which borders crypto malware. Big data is arguably being used for far more nefarious purposes than it is for good right now, and I don't see that changing. Quantum might do some amazing things, but it's going to break encryption as we know it, and I haven't seen anyone present a really good argument for what we're going to do about that. Machine learning is interesting. I think that machine learning is probably my pick for the thing that's going to be the biggest assistance to us. But I'm very skeptical about machine learning because of this guy. This is a guy called Arthur Samuel who worked for IBM back in the 50s. Now, Arthur, as well as being a snappy dresser, was a keen checkers player, or drafts, if you're a pom like me. And he didn't have a lot of friends, maybe because he worked at IBM and liked drafts. So he taught this big mainframe here to play drafts, and he whooped its ass. And he got a bit frustrated. So he, being a bit of a programmer and being a bit of a whiz at these things and not having many friends, he taught his computer to play drafts against itself, and then using the magic of inventing machine learning and clever programming, the computer was able to learn winning strategies somehow, and this was the birth of machine learning, and the computer whooped him at drafts, and it was yay, and IBM thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Now, if you've taught a computer to play drafts through machine learning, to me, the logical next step is to kind of up the ante a little bit. And if you're going to up the ante from drafts, you don't even have to change the board if you go to chess. It's just bit of a jump, bit harder. So IBM set to work creating a computer that could teach itself to play chess and kick the ass of anyone playing chess. So this was 1952. It took until, 1984 before Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov. And there was a massive amount of controversy around that. Kasparov threw his toys out of the pram and accused IBM of cheating. He demanded a rematch. IBM retired Big Blue. So if you look at the delta between the complexity between drafts and chess, and you go from 1952 to 1984, and then you look at the delta of complexity between chess and the types of problems we have in the cybersecurity world, long story short, I don't think I'm going to be put out of work by machine learning anytime soon. So that's the scary bit. I know, who needs Weta Digital when you've got animation on PowerPoint like that? You'll see that again. So let's play a game. Let's make this interactive. So I've designed a game. I've called it Tinderp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch some of my ideas and philosophies and some of the things I think might help you. And if you like them, you get to swipe right, and you can take them home. And if you don't like them, you can swipe left, and you will never see them again, unless you go to another con that I happen to be talking at in the short term. So the first one, simple solutions for complex problems. So what's in the box? Anyone care to guess what's in the box? A bicycle, right? Good guess. That's what you're supposed to think is in the box. No, actually, you're right. Duh. You're supposed to think it's a TV in the box. It's a bicycle in the box, and there's a company in Holland called Van Moof who make bikes, and they got really dirty because the delivery companies kept bending the bikes in delivery. So they thought, hey, why don't we put the bike in a box and put a picture of a TV on the box, and then the delivery guys will be really careful. And this went through LinkedIn like a dose of salts. The person who posted this got like 1,000 million likes, and everyone's like, oh, brilliant, brilliant. The best solutions are always the most simple. And I looked at this with my cynical mind, and for the first 20 seconds, I was like, oh my God, that is genius, mind blown. And then I started thinking, hang on a minute. So you're telling me there's this guy in Holland who's a delivery guy who rocks up to the bike factory and fills his van with all these TVs and then drives around all the bicycle shops in Amsterdam delivering these TVs, and he's wondering, why are all these bike shops selling all these TVs, right? So, and then I saw this little green leaf in the picture, and I'm thinking, Amsterdam, green leaf, maybe everyone's just, so I call bullshit on this. I think that this is a marketing exercise. I think that, they said that there was 80% reduction in damage to bicycles as a result of this campaign. And I think, well, I want to go to the TV companies and see how much percentage of damage is increased in TVs, because now all the Dutch delivery drivers think there are TVs in the box. So really what I'm saying here is I love InfoSec because I get to be cynical. My wife has always given me a hard time because I'm glass half empty. In fact, I'm not just glass half empty, I see broken glass and sour milk. I am the most cynical person. And InfoSec gives me a chance to be cynical, and that is a wonderful thing. We largely get to, as InfoSec people, we largely get to piss on other people's dreams. We're the guy in the room when the web guys go, oh, we've got this really good idea, we're going to be able to do this, and you're kind of putting your hand up going, but, what if this happens, what if that happens? So be cynical, especially when somebody comes to you with a simple solution to a complex problem. They do exist. There are some great things out there, but they are few and far between, and almost always they're bullshit. So swipe right, swipe left. Sit in stunned silence. I'm dyslexic, so I can't tell which is right and left when I'm the wrong way around anyway. Okay, next generation security. So who recognizes this bad boy here? This was man's first attempt to break the chains of slavery between technology and himself. This meant that you could actually go out instead of having to stay in to watch a country practice or whatever. And we got our first one of these in 1981, and my dad was over the moon with his video recorder until the point when he tried to set the timer to record something. Setting the timer on this thing was a bitch. You had to get the right channel, you had to set the time on the thing, you had to get the right, make sure the tape was right, you had to, so many things, and it never went right. It was just a source of arguments. And of course, my dad did what everyone did at this time to solve the problem of complexity in this. They drafted in the children, and the children in the house were in charge of setting the video, and they outsourced the problem and the blame for when it went wrong. So what it meant is the older people in this room grew up being exposed to really difficult technical problems. And that kind of sowed the seed which became potentially a career in computing. So when we got our first computer, I don't know if that's my eyesight or the focus, but I got my first computer was a Commodore 64, and it came with a bunch of games that were crap, and when I got bored of the games, there was this little blinking cursor here that invited me to try coding for the first time. And we did, and we bought magazines and we wrote code, and it was awesome. Actually, they were crap, but what it did was it schooled us in this idea of programming computers, and with our newfound knowledge from programming the VCR, we got that introduction. Then what happened is all of these computers were replaced by PlayStations and consoles and Super NESs and all those kind of things. And this thing, when you got bored of the games, you were stuffed. There was never a console. There was never that, why don't you try programming? So we lost a whole generation of potential cybersecurity people purely through that one thing. And it's only now that this is being addressed by Raspberry Pis and code clubs, and that's a great thing, but we are teaching children to code, and nobody is there saying, hang on a minute, if we're going to teach children to code, we should be also teaching them about secure coding. We should be teaching them about, being cynical and bad things happening. So we have to think, I don't have the answers necessarily. My view is that if we're going to get more people into security, we need to start with primary school children, not university kids. I think by the time you're leaving university, trying to steer you towards security is just going to create a whole generation of kids that are good at pushing risk registers around. I think that there's a lot of universities doing some really awesome courses in pen testing, but pen testing isn't the only thing in security. There are a lot of other things, as well as pushing risk registers around. So we need to sow that seed really early, and we need to equip children, primary school children, with the ability to not set their password, the name of their dog, and so on and so forth. Next one, the cyber wargasm. Quick question, cyber war, what is it good for? Cyber war is kind of one of my pet hates. It's a thing. The Americans and the Chinese and everyone is training these battalions of cyber warriors, and it's the fifth domain and all this kind of stuff. And I guess my problem with this is if you go back and read up on where the term cyber war came from, it came from a couple of guys, John Aquila and Dennis Ronsfeld at the Rand Corporation, which ironically was parodied in this film. And what they were writing about back then in 1984 1997, I think it was. What they were writing about was they had two things. There was cyber war and there was net war. And net war is kind of what we consider cyber war now. Cyber war was this idea of nation states taking out industrial controls and so on and so forth. And I think where I have a problem with cyber war is when an organization tries to take military tactics, or even governments or anyone tries to come up with military doctrine and military solutions and apply them to cyber problems, it's absurd to me. It's not war. It's not a oversimplified zero-sum game. And I think the best example I have is if you want to look at the application of military thinking to problems that don't lend themselves to military thinking, look at the war on drugs, look at the war on terrorism, and look how they turned out. And if we keep allowing our politicians and our think tanks and our policymakers to be caught up in this idea that military solutions are the answer to InfoSec, we are going to end up with military solutions, and military solutions are really bad. You know, collateral damage, you know, all these poor outcomes. So when you hear people talking about cyber war, or you see vendors trying to sell you military defense style solutions, think twice. I think it's a really bad thing. Okay, getting a bit fit. So those of you at the front will be able to see that I'm a bit of an overachiever nutritionally. I went to see my GP a couple of years ago, and he said, well, you're a bit big, but it's okay. It's easy. You just lose some weight. All you need to do, the secret of losing weight, it's easy. All you need to do is eat less, move more. Brilliant, I thought. So a year later, I go back to see the same GP, and he weighs me, and he's like, you haven't lost any weight. Why haven't you lost any weight? I told you what the secret was last year. And I had this kind of epiphany that, hang on a minute, that's exactly what we do at work. We do a pen test, we go in and we tell a company, you've got these problems, but it's easy. All you need to do is patch your systems and change those default passwords and do this, 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 and this. And we go away, and then we come back a year later and, why are you still fat? Like, what? I told you what to do. Why did you do it? We've just changed the date on the report. Like, what is going on? So it's this, we're not insecure because we don't know why we're insecure. Right? So if you want to know anything about dieting, go and ask a fat person. They are experts on dieting. They've done them all. They know what works. They know what doesn't work. But they're still fat. Why are they still fat? And it's because, so instead of thinking about this like a GP, think about this like a personal trainer. If you've got a client and he needs to lose weight, she needs to lose weight, it depends on the person. So you have to design a regime for that person. Are they a sporty person? Are they a geek? If they're a geek, get them a Fitbit. Fitbit's crap, by the way. I've had one for a year. I haven't lost a single kilo. That's why I'm pacing up and down the stage. I'm trying to rack up my mileage as well. So if you change that mindset to not just telling people, hey, you need to eat less and move more, it's that, okay, let's come along with you for the journey. Let's be there when you fall over at the first hurdle and pick you up and get you back on that exercise bike. And that's what we need to do in security. We need to go along with people for the ride. It's not enough to just issue these ridiculous platitudinous statements like, hey, you just need to patch all the things. If I hear another pen test say, it's easy, you just need to patch all the things, I want to send them to work in an operational team for 6 months, because patching all the things is freaking hard. The first thing that happens when you patch all the things is you break all the things and get told don't ever touch them again. So that's a particular peeve of mine. So think about this like a personal trainer. Okay, next one, stop, collaborate, and listen. I'm back with a brand new invention, collaboration. Now, we all get wrapped up in collaboration. Everybody goes on about collaboration. Governments are talking about it. Everyone agrees it's a good idea. A lot of people don't really understand it. I happen to work for a company that's it's kind of the whole kind of buzz is about collaboration and bees and honey, and we're really proud of that. Now, yes, there's collaboration that's threat intelligence and sticks and taxi and IOCs and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But there's also this element of collaboration, which is what we're all doing today. This is coffee beer, by the way. So coffees and beers is collaboration. So having beers with people, having coffees with people, reaching out to people. Just pinging someone on LinkedIn who's in a similar organization to you and just making that introduction, saying, hey, we're doing this, we're doing the same sorts of things that you do, and let's have a beer and a chat, and sharing that knowledge. Now, This is absolutely critical if we're going to keep up with this tsunami of adversaries that I'm predicting here, because they've been brilliant at collaborating. Hackers are awesome at sharing their success stories and their fail stories and learning from the mistakes of others. So we need to do that. Now, if you think that collaborating is going to be difficult, consider this. All of the banks in Australia, who we know hate each other, have been collaborating for years brilliantly. Somehow, the banks have managed to pull together their resources, agree that they're not going to compete on security, and they are sharing information with each other. They're sharing skills, they're doing secondments. If the banks can do it, like, surely there's no impediment, no real impediment to us to start working together on these kind of things. So, last slide. Okay, this is my magnum opus. So, the Mr. Men, cyber war. Roger Hargreaves, if you want to know about cyber, forget about Sun Tzu, read Roger Hargreaves. The Mr. Men books have far more to tell us about cybersecurity. So I call this pay, pal, foo. All right, easy to remember. Pay, pal, foo. People are evil. People are lazy. People make mistakes. So what you will find is, if you look at InfoSec and controls and all those kind of things that we leverage at the problem of cyber, you'll find that 80% of the effort is spent on this idea that people are evil. The Chinese are coming, state-sponsored attackers are coming, script kiddies are coming, and we put all our eggs in this basket. Meanwhile, down here, 80% of the problems that we have all boil down to people being lazy and people making mistakes. So every security researcher, every security consultant will tell you they go into a company, the things that kept people owned aren't these amazingly talented zero-day dropping state-sponsored attackers. It's Dave, the firewall guy, who just put in an any rule on rule 4 of the firewall. And you go, Dave, what's this? Oh, yeah, we know about that. We tried to remove it once and it broke a load of stuff and we got told never to touch it again. So this is what happens. And this is, these people are largely, outside of Zero Day and Mossad and these types of guys, these guys are largely benign. If you could fix this problem, which you can't, because humans, everything you do in security, it's a human problem. Boston Consulting Group put a really interesting slide on LinkedIn the other week, which was all about how these are all the problems in cyber we've identified, and 80% of these are all to do with people, and then there's this 20% which is insufficient technology. And I'm kind of like, well, hang on a minute. Insufficient technology is procured by people. If you've got insufficient technology, it's built by people. It's designed by people. It's tested by people. So cybersecurity is a 100% people problem. And it's all contained within this magical triangle. Not to pick on people being lazy, but there are also things under-resourced, underfunded, poorly motivated, disempowered, underpaid, misfocused, bored. There's all things amount to the same things. So if you can start to balance that skew and start to think not just about the let's go buy some magic amulet to prevent Zero Day, but are we doing config reviews to make sure that there isn't a stupid rule? Are we actually making sure that the guy whose job it is to patch the things is patching the things in a reasonable time frame? So come down and look at this stuff first, and spend 80% of your time on that, 20% of your time on that. And I think I will have ideas.